Hello, everyone, and good morning from Australia. I'm Vanessa Mollard, and I want to warmly welcome you to the Energized Empowered Professional Women Summit. We are live today on International Women's Day and have this amazing group of women who are all here to share their stories, their wisdom, because we are here to help you leave behind exhaustion, frustration, and burnout to confidently take back your life with renewed energy and vitality. And so, with all these three platforms of YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, chuck in your comments, your questions, and go for your life because we want to hear from you. We want to support you and we want to love on you. And how are we going to really help you as well? By all our interviews, we're going to have these real, raw conversations on how to identify, communicate, heal, and prevent burnout. And we have amazing bonuses from all these women who are in the interviews as well, because they want to give from their heart and they know they want to support you in many, many different ways. So now let's start our interview for today. And it is Dr. Fiona Enkelmann, and I am so delighted to have her here in the summit. Hi, Fiona.
Hi, Vanessa. Thank you so much for having me. What a day! International Women's Day. I feel very blessed to be here.
Oh, it's I actually did not realize it was International Women's Day when I organized this summit. I just kind of like, oh yeah, that looks great. Let's go. And I also didn't really recognize it was also the full moon yesterday for us. And so,
yeah.
And so it's kind of a collision of things, and I'm going, oh my god, oh my god.
Yeah, and we're all feeling it. So
yeah, no, it's fantastic, and I would love to have a quick thing on how I came across Fiona's work. And I was looking up burnout symptoms because I was researching for myself and also for my clients and for this summit, and I came across her Spotify podcast, and it was Burnout to Bliss, and it's there. It's an amazing resource, and I love the way she broke things down and the way she talked about it, and so much heart in what she's doing. And she has an incredible program for women in burnout, which has reflected her success in helping so many women. And when I reached out to her, she agreed, and I was completely in gratitude for her saying yes, let's do this. And we all call her Dr. Fee, and she's a fellow Aussie.
Yes.
And an incredible heart-centered burnout to bliss transformation coach who has successfully supported hundreds of women to overcome burnout, reconnect to themselves, and embrace their bliss. And some of the listeners here are from her beautiful community, and we welcome them. And her own burnout as a young emergency doctor, combined with a deep desire to help her patients, was the catalyst to embark on a journey of self-discovery and healing. And she completed her fellowship in general practice, a master's of public health, studied nutritional and environmental medicine, and incorporated functional medicine in her practice as a holistic and integrative doctor. Wow, you're incredible, Fiona.
And, thank you. Student of life, Vanessa.
Exactly, right? And and to further understand how the human mind, body, and spirit actually work, she embraced alternative healing therapies, mind, body, and energy medicine, which is fantastic. So yes, holistic. And she's been blessed to study with great masters around the world and receive initiations in diverse spiritual practices. So thank you very much for joining us, Fiona, this morning.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. It's a joy to be here, absolutely, and supporting this work and helping women when they're at that crossroads, whether they're in the depths of burnout or wondering, what it is, why I'm feeling the way I am. It's a delight to be here and support people and sprinkle our magic in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we would love to hear first of your personal experience of burnout and burnout recovery. And I like how the way you put it, as a high achieving perfectionist type gal. So I can relate to
Completely.
that.
Oh my
Woo!
goodness. Yes. And that's, often we attract the people who we were, as coaches, as healers. And my journey really started as a junior medical doctor. So I had this deep desire always to help the world. I wanted to save the world. And as a junior doctor, I thought that would take the shape of international aid work. And my husband and I, in my second year of residency, went to East Africa. And we worked there, and I did primarily children's health. So I was managing a hospital ward. And I mean, as you know, because your background in malaria, it is confronting. It was an incredibly rewarding experience. I learned about the true nature of the human spirit in that situation, strength and grit and resilience. But I realized I didn't really have the skills to handle such challenging experiences. And so when I came home, I did what most people do, which is just push it down and keep going. And I came up to Darwin Hospital, an amazing community of people in Darwin, and my focus was Indigenous health. And just in my stage of denial and my deep desire to be perfect, I kept a lot of pressure on myself. And if I had done 100% before, I was now striving for 120%. And there was external pressures as well, but it was really this internal drive to be perfect, to do really, really well. And I started to notice lots of warning signs, and I started to feel exhausted and depleted. And I think one of the worst things was waking up full of dread. This sense of like, oh my God, another day. And I started becoming a very different person. It's like in that depletion, in that depletion, I started to react, and my husband got the worst of that. So it's amazing how the people you love the most sometimes are those that you hurt the most too. And it wasn't that I wasn't trying not to. I think in my attempt to think myself better, I actually put a lot more pressure on myself. And in turn, my physical health started to suffer. My skin, my cycle went out of whack. My skin got worse. My thyroid, I had an autoimmune condition that, my biochemistry went off. And I, again, like seeing this as warning signs, it wasn't that I didn't want to help myself. I just didn't really know how to. And I'd look around in life and be like, okay, what needs to happen here? And my mentors, who I absolutely loved, some of the most amazing consultants I've ever worked with and colleagues, but I really only saw two options. The first was to run marathons to handle this stress, or to drink alcohol. And I was really good at drinking alcohol, and it was the only spirit I knew was alcohol,
Yeah.
And I was just, having to swim through it in a way. And it was more of a sinking feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I just did what I could do at that time. I did see a psychologist who said you're anxious. And I did, obviously being medical, I knew what the conventional approaches were, but none of it really sat well, because in that state of burnout, there's such a deep disconnection to who I knew I was. I would lose myself in reactions. And so it only, you just keep pushing on. You just keep pushing on. You try and think yourself better, and it's just stress less, or you rely on willpower, like, okay, tomorrow will be different. And by the end of it, I started to really notice the thing that defined my value the most was my medical work. And when it started to impact that, so as an example, empathy fatigue. And I know a lot of experts in burnout want to step away from calling it that, because it's putting like the blame onto the employees, onto the person, the client. But it is empathy fatigue. In that state, I had very little to give anything. A damn about the fact that my patient was dying in ICU. I just was like, are you kidding me? Like I'd hear this negative voice, like, are you kidding? Kids are dying in Africa all the time. What the hell? You're not caring about them. And that's when I would go, ooh, oh my gosh, like what's happening to me? What's happening to me? And it was like a part of myself was grieving, like I was grieving losing a part of myself. And I was just, again, like this is over 18 months, 2 years, like just keep going. And finally, my body gave me a wake-up call. I developed an essential tremor, which is a shake. My value was to be procedural, like to be very good at doing procedures like cannulas and needles and do emergency medicine, critical care. And part of the reason being in Africa is like you're just there. You're like, you're in the Wild West. And it's just, you get this confidence as a junior doctor to push your boundaries and really have confidence. And when that happened, my whole world felt like it was coming down on me, and I decompensated this one particular day. And I know this was orchestrated. It was divinely orchestrated. I had this moment, and I will share this because this will resonate with you, Vanessa. I had this moment where I'm junior doctor responsible for one part. So it's a high dependency unit. They're not as sick as the ICU. And I had this sixth sense, like this sense that this one patient, something was going to happen to him. I can't describe. And I kept checking with the senior nurses because they know what's going on. Nurses know what's going on. I kept checking with my consultant. Is everything okay with him? His vitals were fine. And it was weird. I checked multiple times. And in a moment, he decompensated. Lights start, all the flashes, all the beep, beep, all the vitals are going off. And I knew it. I knew that was going to happen. In that moment, I was like, I'm dealing with my own experience of something, such a paradigm shift. Have no spirituality or concept of knowing or leaning into intuition at that stage. Nothing. I had no framework, no concept of that. I'm well in the conventional world. You understand the predictable thinking, the logical, rational thinking. And in that moment, I had massive panic. I was kind of dissociated from my body and I couldn't help, which then spiraled me into shame. Okay, so that's the darkest moment of my burnout. My sister said to me, sweetheart, you need help. And she's in Sydney and she invited me to come. I just finished my first part exams for my specialty. And she said, come to Sydney. I've booked you in for a healing and we're going to do some meditation. I laughed at her and I said, you're such a hippie. There's no way I'm going to do that. Are you kidding me? Like, on the ward round this morning, we talked about the evidence behind amiodarone and the treatment of atrial fibrillation. Like, are you kidding me? I am not going to go and try some of your, smoking patchouli and waving crystals in the air. Guess what? I came back to her and I said, oh my goodness, I feel dreadful. And I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't want to just manage it. Like I'm just managing it. I don't want to just manage it. There's something missing here.
Yep.
And fortunately, I lent into that. I had this experience. It was just this most profound experience in this healing session. I woke up to realizing that there is more to what is health and healing. I could see how my personal energy was still bound to every child who had died. I was still holding on to it as if it was my responsibility. I'm to blame. And so when I let that go in this 45-minute session, I walked out feeling like I could breathe again. Like if you've ever gone out dancing and you're wearing high heels and you come home, you finally take your high heels off and you wiggle your toes and there's that relief. Like imagine that, but full body. My sister said, how was it? And I was like, it was good. But what the hell was that? Like, what was that? I had this paradigm shift. Like, I do not know how to explain that. And I have a very strong, I got tingles thinking about it. I've got a strong science background. Look at it. I've done undergrad science and then medicine, and I've done a master's of public health, biostatistics, epidemiology, baby, I'm there.
Yep.
And so coming out and just going, I've had this experience that I cannot explain. I am going to lean into this with full curiosity. Yep. But honestly, at the start, it was a little bit of an experience to try and understand it. And so it was about 4 days. That was on the Saturday. On the Tuesday, I had a light bulb moment where I just was like, you know what? I can't deny this. And I remember just looking up and saying to my husband, hey, darling, I know I'd committed to doing emergency medicine. I know you and I have made this massive move here. And, the last 6 to 12 months, I've been studying for my exams. I've passed them. But undeniably, I have to change direction. And I made the decision to leave that, to study general practice, to go into my fellowship of general practice, and simultaneously, so walk that path and simultaneously walk the path of understanding energy medicine and the relationship between our mind, our emotions, and the body at the same time. And so I'm sort of, for many, many years, walking this path together, and it would weave and intersect. And I just had the most gorgeous patients who would trust me. I mean, a lot of my initial days was working in a community health center, working with people with a lot of trauma, a lot of needs, a lower socioeconomic class, and so we would have longer sessions. They would trust me in this work, and we would explore health together and healing together, and through their input and my own experience and my own recovery, we just worked well together and turned my whole practice changed. But I'd love to say I lived happily ever after, like they do in Disney. But actually, I think one of the most pivotal moments of my life was actually years on. And, that's a whole nother story, is when my son got sick. But, I think really it's been an absolute blessing. Looking back now, I have absolute evidence that it is our challenges that wake us up to the truth of who we are and realign us to a path that is so much more rewarding. At the start, we're just so scared to lean in and trust that we're being, corrected on our course. But I wouldn't have it any other way. And I know that sounds like probably to a lot of people who are in the depth of pain. And I'm sure that version of me in 2007, 2008 would be just like, oh gosh, what has she been smoking? But, I think really once we start acknowledging that, this is a part of the bigger plan for me, for my expression, my full expression in life, then there's a reason for why we feel the way we do. There's a reason why we're experiencing this. And I think I'm a living, breathing example of that. And also, as you said, helping hundreds and hundreds of women to do that. And prior to them, thousands of patients, like my patients that come to see me, I worked in a very different way to most conventional medicine, which is why I left. In 2019, I left medicine because, obviously there's a duty of care. If you come and see a general practitioner, they have their role, and I'm not diminishing that. And for me, my role and how I work is very different. And so I wanted to lift that ceiling and really, again, being called to help women do extraordinary things. And so that's why, again, you take that leap. It's a calling. It's this thing that's like, ooh. But this time it was under, like, things are really, really good. So I'm not going, things get to be good and we get to take that leap to greatness. And so that was an example for it. And so for the last 3 years, I've been working as a transformation coach, as you said, as Burnout to Bliss, and helping women to, really reconnect with themselves. There's so many amazing solutions out there. There's so many wonderful things that we can do for self-care. There's so much, but there's this piece that I think is really important in overcoming burnout, and it's called discernment. Discerning is critical in cultivating wisdom, and it's being able to reconnect with yourself, right? And be able to discern what is going to be my path forward. And that is a critical factor in burnout recovery, is coming back to me realizing I have the solution within me, but I'm just so disconnected in burnout. So I have to come back to me, to my heart, which is today's conversation as well.
Yep. And that's so true. I completely resonate with all of that. That's why I had to get you to come here and share your story with everybody, because I'm not a medical doctor or anything like that. But yet, I felt this empathy fatigue. So one of the joys of working in research is to mentor and to bring up young scientists in the field, and to help them to grow and to think scientifically and to work as a team and all that sort of stuff, right? And it came to a point where I had these brilliant young people coming through, and I struggled so hard to actually connect with them properly and to feel the joy of mentoring them. And I judged myself so hard, because 10 years ago, I felt amazing when I did that. And I know it's doing good. I've seen, all these amazing young people just grow up, and like some of them are heads of labs now. And then now in the last 5 years, I just felt overwhelmed, maybe frustrated and resentful. That's the word. And it's
got nothing left to give, sweetheart. And isn't it interesting that our way of coping with that, which is to make ourselves wrong, women are very wired to blame ourselves for it. It's my fault that this is happening. That actually compounds the issue, doesn't it? And so it's thank you for sharing that, because, in our desire to have a really good life, to have a blissful life, to really have a breathtaking life, because that's what we desire, we want to avoid pain. We want to avoid conflict. We don't want to feel the discomfort, the negative. That's how we're conditioned through our culture, society, And so what ends up happening is, in order to not feel that resentment or that depletion or that or that shame that happened because the boss yelled at you in front of other people, or you feel guilty because you're splitting yourself and you couldn't show up to your kid's sports day and you had to, but you're also feeling like a failure because you're behind on that deadline. What happens is that we don't want to feel it. Why? We want to have a good life. I don't want to feel it. But in turn, we are actually carrying it, and we end up having a painful life. And our desire to have a pain-free life, we end up having a painful life. Rather than, as I was sharing before, it's our challenges. It's like, how can we hold the duality, the polarity of life? Like, quite simply, if you can think about a pendulum, a pendulum that swings. We can't experience happiness without the sadness. If we just say, oh, I don't want to feel sad. Being sad, no one likes me, because think about the conditioning right from a little age, like little girl. Don't be sad, put on a happy face. Girls, girls are meant to be happy and pretty and, like playful. So don't feel sad. Come on. Or the masculine approach. That was my approach upbringing, like, come on, pick yourself up. Just keep going. Push it aside. You can do it. And I'm not saying let's not beat ourselves up as parents. We're doing the very best that we can do. But that creates this shift in my relationship to my sadness, to my feelings, to negative emotions. And so in turn, I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel it. Oh my gosh. So we don't want to feel it. So how do the pendulum can't swing. So end up, what do we feel? Numb, disconnected, limited. We want to control life. We want to control stresses. We want to control out there. We want to control how we feel. And in turn, we end up having this really boxed in, limited experience in life, which is very restricted and very opposite of what myself, my clients want, which is this sense of inner freedom and like being able to say yes and being able to embrace it all. And I think there's this shift in understanding that a blissful life, a joyful life is one that has challenges. Is one where life gets messy. It's one where we can spiral into absolute shame. It's one where we can feel the heartbreak and the depth of sadness. But guess what? When you lean into it and realize, I'm not that. This is an experience. I'm having feelings. It's real, but I don't have to create stories around it. Simultaneously, there's a strength within us. That's the witness. That's the strength of the soul. That's the soul self, infinite intelligence. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, quantum field, God self, whatever you want to call it. There's something in there watching your mind right now, right, Vanessa? Like, oh my gosh, I like what Dr. Fee's saying. I don't like what she's saying. I like what her earrings look like. Oh, well, I wonder what's in the back. Like, there's something watching the mind. So simultaneously, when we're going through an experience, we can have such this depth of sadness, but still feel strength with it. And when we acknowledge that this is, I'm having a real experience, sadness, and I get to feel my feelings, we move through it versus, got to push it down, got to ignore it, got to suppress it, got to project it. That was me. That's why what I was sharing with my stories, like, I became a horrible person, reactive to my husband. And I was like, because I didn't have a relationship with my emotional self, anytime that I saw him doing something, my own unworthiness, my self-worth or lack of self-worth, I just projected onto him, critical, like, oh my God, what are you doing that for? Oh my God, that's not great. Oh, you're so incapable. But what I'm actually saying to myself is, I'm unworthy, I'm incapable. Like waking up with dread and having that negative critical voice in my head, constantly berating. Holy smokes, what did you do today? Did you put the wrong thing in the medical chart? Oh my gosh, did you notice how the surgeon looked at you? Oh God, he's probably thinking you're a stupid, dumb blonde. Probably, who cares? But I'd fixate it, ruminate it. And so what we commonly think, so I've got to stop this. I got to think differently. We might read some self-help books. My thoughts create my reality. Oh my God, have you heard what's going on in here? My thoughts are creating a really crappy reality. Okay, and you start waking up to this mind. You start waking up to our mind, and it's very unhelpful. It can be really, really negative. But the thing is, we're having, as we all know, 80,000 thoughts a day. So many of them are negative. Most of the time, our mind is telling us unhelpful, especially in burnout, unhelpful, unresourceful, unkind, unfriendly things. It can tell us friendly things. We can say, I'm worthy. We can say, I deserve so much more than this. We can say that. But what we miss by a cognitive approach alone is this very important factor that the role our feelings play, our heart plays in being human. And so this is where it's really good to look at the thought-feeling loop. So we have a thought, like one of the common thoughts in burnout for me was, I'm just not enough. There was this like something that just played over and over again. And so when we have that thought, what happens? Get a flood of emotions, which are our, well, for that, it's like a shame, we get this experience of shame. It creates this feeling within us. And shame is a mixture of adrenaline and noradrenaline. And, there's not much serotonin or dopamine happening in shame. So it's like your body responds, and shame is like this, shame is like, it's like weakening. It's like, I feel it in my gut. I feel it like the wind has been knocked out of me.
Yes.
So when we have shame, when we have this feeling of shame, it then creates this corresponding feedback to the brain. Right. And all of a sudden we get this cascade of other shameful thoughts. So now I might have been berating myself for making a mistake in my preparation for today. And if I just leave it as that and ignore this shame, what we'll notice, and I'm sure you've done this, is all of a sudden you start thinking about all the things you've done wrong. Like, and I'm a crappy mum. Oh my gosh. And how I spoke to Nick. And oh my goodness, I haven't called mum. I haven't called my mum for 2 days. Oh, I'm the worst daughter ever. And it just spirals. And so now these thoughts are creating an amplified feeling, right? Of deep shame, deep despair. I'm a failure, and it just is compounding. And we're trying to do our cognitive approaches here. We're trying to go, no, I'm not, no, think positive. No, don't think this way. Stop it. Stress less. Stop it. But unless we meet the undercurrent, this is what I refer to as the undercurrent. We all have it. We all know it. It's there. Unless we meet that, and really address what we're feeling we're going to spend a lot of time trying to address our thoughts, are we not? 80,000 thoughts.
Yep.
It's full-time work just there. You can't get anything else done.
The energy is gone just by controlling those thoughts. And I get it. I have the thing too. It's quite fascinating to see how the mind works with that thought feeling loop, as you talked about.
The most powerful, though, is when you shift your feeling. What happens is that your thoughts immediately shift. Because it's our feelings that shift our perspective. And this is a really beautiful thing to understand when we talk about burnout. And I'm sure many of your other speakers have talked about the stress cycle and the burnout cycle. But, you know, it's not about an event that causes us to be stressed. It's about how we perceive an event that causes us to be stressed. Okay. Yep. And when we realize that it's about perception, we then get to take responsibility.
Yes.
Because now we're not victim to an event. So you and I, like Vanessa, like right now, I could invite you. I live up in Sunshine Coast. It's so beautiful up here. You know, we could be enjoying this most beautiful view and the sunset and, oh my gosh, breathtaking. Our brain is taking in millions of billions of bits of information, but we're only consciously aware of a small amount of that. Yep. And so based on my undercurrent, which is the lens I look through, I might notice these gorgeous flowers and sunset. And I've used you in this example, sorry. And you might notice, oh my God, do you see those insects? Oh my God, look at that spider. Oh my gosh. Do you understand? Like we can... So we have the same experience. We've got not the same experience. We have the same event.
Yes.
But it's based on this undercurrent that determines our experience. And that's why our emotions are so important, because they trigger how we think. They determine the decisions we make. They determine the actions we take. And ultimately, the experience we have, because like my example of feeling ashamed before, like he could say to me, oh, I don't know, Fee, you're great, you're wonderful. In an experience of shame, I'm not going to receive that, am I?
No, you're not. Yep. You know? I can, yep.
But Vanessa, if you're in an experience of love, if you're lit up, like how does love feel to you?
Oh, just, it fills the heart and it kind of fills the whole body, just like whole body experience. That's love. And you just, and so you know
how you do, you strengthen, you've extended, we're both doing this, like our arms are back.
Exactly.
So what do you notice in love? You notice so much different. Now you're like noticing people are supporting me and smiling at me and oh my gosh, there's opportunities coming to me. Now, what has changed? Has anything changed out there? No. The only thing that changes is in here. And that is where that's where life gets really exciting. Because when we shift this, we can change. And this is what my clients show me. We can change a nightmare life into a life that I truly love with nothing out there changing. But just this. And that's the power of the heart. Like that is about reconnecting and feeling and learning how to feel. Because it's a scary thing. It's a scary, scary thing when you've been stuck in burnout, waking up with dread, trying to push it down to keep going. And that's how we're conditioned. That's how we're wired, is just push it down, keep on swimming like Dory. Then it takes a little practice. It takes learning, but it takes embodiment to really meet that part of ourselves again. But when we do, it changes everything. Because to me, that's the definition of empowerment. Empowerment isn't just about putting boundaries in place and saying no, because most women in burnout do that. And I'm laughing because I've been one of them. Do that. And then we beat ourselves up. No, and then I feel guilty for doing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, absolutely. And you were talking about that, and it brought to mind gratitude. Like, it just, how you said it shifts how you look at something, and that emotion attached to a particular event and how we perceive it. And that's when gratitude comes in as a major thing, because it engages the heart, and they've shown it helps to release all the beautiful chemicals that you need from you, because it just opens everything up, and
It
it
does. And it
changes.
creates real brain changes. Like, it's
Yeah,
real. It's
yeah,
real
it's absolutely
measurable
real.
outcomes. And the research is showing that you could do a gratitude practice now and for several weeks, and in months down the track, you still have real lasting changes that are measurable. So it's really interesting. But I'm going to add another element to that, because often we hear these concepts, don't we? And we're like,
Yep.
I just need to be more grateful. And so we try, and often when we're in a state of burnout, we are more transactional with our tools. So if you've been in burnout or overwhelmed for a long period of time and you're trying everything, it's okay, because there's a process from thinking grateful to really embodying and being grateful, just as like you were sharing then, Vanessa, like you could feel your energy. It's like gratitude, like it's a bit of muscle that you have to build, isn't it, to really
Yes.
practice it. But to take it further, if you could imagine, so David Hawkins is this amazing psychiatrist who brought kinesiology and the science behind kinesiology. He did muscle testing in the body to really show how our emotions impact the body. And shame is right down the bottom. Shame is like the lowest. Oh my gosh, it is like in a ball. If you're feeling angry, celebrate, because you've got more energy, you got more potency, more power than shame. Okay, so if you're constantly angry, it's better than being constantly ashamed. But basically mapping out the if you can imagine, it's like a graph. You've got shame down the bottom, anger, and then fear, judgment, pride, and you're going up love, peace, enlightenment. Okay. And so if you can imagine gratitude, so we all have a baseline. So most people live life stuck in these lower vibrational, these low emotional states, because they don't want to feel them. So what happens? We get stuck in them. And so most are stuck in this experience of shame. And every now and then they'll have a moment where they'll walk out onto the beach and they'll look, and they're just like, oh my gosh, they look up and they see the beauty around them, and it's just like, this is so precious. This life is so beautiful. It's breathtaking. And they've shifted, but it's only momentarily, and they come back down again. For me, for my clients, what we're about is shifting our baseline so that we're in an experience of courage or love, like that. This is our baseline of gratitude. But it's recognizing, of course, we're going to take a visit to depression. We're going to take a visit to sadness. We're going to go down into anger, because that's normal. We have our feelings. They're real. Look at a child. Angry, sad, happy, throw yourself on the ground.
Yeah.
And that's our emotions. They move. So gratitude, while you say, yeah, it does. Like if you imagine a balloon right down the bottom, the tail is like pinned right down this bottom. It's held, anchored in this vibration of shame. And gratitude brings your vibration up, doesn't it? You can get out of an experience of shame. But if you actually come and meet the experience of shame first through acceptance, like, let me feel this first. And then you engage in gratitude. What you've done is you've untethered yourself. You've liberated yourself from this here in this moment. So if you can imagine, that balloon can just fly high with the gratitude. It's not tethered. It can just fly high. So, often in burnout or doing self-care, we are just sort of we're sort of throwing everything we can at it. And we can be a little transactional with our tools. We can get caught in the tool, like, it's not working. We get frustrated. And if we're talking about emotions, the most empowering thing that you could really engage in is this process of acceptance, bringing acceptance to your feeling state. And this is challenging for people because I'll ask you, Vanessa, when you think of acceptance, say 5 years ago, not now because you're different, but 5 years ago, what would acceptance have meant to you then?
It's quite interesting because acceptance had nothing to do with me, actually. It's quite fascinating. So acceptance was when someone externally said you were doing a good job. Acceptance was whenever let's just put it this
like a
way,
validation.
a validation. That was acceptance. Acceptance was, so these are the rules that I set around myself, right? Which I'm going to fail all the time, and so hence I disappoint myself, and then you're going down the emotional
Hope for
spiral.
the best, but expect for the worst. Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, I will be accepted only if I am externally validated when someone says you're doing a good job, or when I am successful in producing 5 scientific papers a year, when all my students,
you and me, sister, we're hanging out in the same classroom.
I know, or when my students all get, I don't know, their PhDs or what, all that stuff. It was never and so I set up myself to fail in acceptance.
So often, like, I love that because that's relating to what I've got as a PDF to share with everyone, which is about these emotional needs.
Yep.
Often, though, we define, like, if I was to accept my burnout, if I was to accept this challenge in front of me, because in the state of survival, we are wired to resist, to fight, to run away.
Yep.
So accepting what is, accepting how I feel, accepting the isness of the situation is counterintuitive. It's against our primal instinct. Yet resisting stuff is what's triggering our sympathetic overdrive.
Yep.
Acceptance is like, it takes us, when I'm accepting of something, it's what activates the parasympathetics, which is the way that we come back to balance. So, I'm feeling ashamed. If I'm saying I can't feel this way, I got to push it down, we're really just continuing in that burnout cycle. Do you see this? When we just say, actually, it is what it is, and I learn to accept this. What's really tricky for people is that they think this means giving up. It means that I don't get what I want. It means that I lose my power to the situation. It means that they win and I lose. No, it means the exact opposite. When we resist, we become very, very depleted. And that's when often we'll give up. When we accept, and it's like, I accept how I feel, I accept this. And it's a feeling, just like what we were talking about before, practicing gratitude. You got to practice it. There's a difference between thinking grateful and feeling grateful. There's a difference between, I'm accepting of my situation right now, because most of us are like highly driven, capable, perfectionist type girls who just have this massive heart that want to do great things in the world. And for us to struggle, it's like, no, this shouldn't be happening to me. It's okay if it happens to Vanessa. It's okay if it happens to that other person. But for me, it's not okay because this is not me. But if we can just be okay with where we're at, what happens is that we love, through acceptance, we end up loving ourselves back to whole. We're not forcing ourselves to be different. We meet our emotions again. We meet our emotional needs better. We meet ourselves better, and we can feel our feelings. And when that happens, we liberate energy. So initially we're like, oh, I'm burnout. We're all depleted and all stuck and bound in shame and all of this. And through, healing, through acceptance, love, and compassion, now we're liberating energy. Now we have power. Our problems shrink and we're strong. We can handle it, which is a blissful life. If you remember, that's how we started this conversation. It's like, how do I lean in and encompass it all? And that's the path through. And one of the resources that we're gifting as a part of this summit is an inner child meditation. So there's many different ways of looking at what are my basic human and emotional needs. And one of the resources I've given is our handout about, it's a list of 7 inner child needs. So there's different methodology. I prefer the inner child because it's very simplistic. I teach it in a very simple way, as you can tell. I like simplicity, so I teach it in a simple way, and it makes it powerful because this is a really beautiful way of reconnecting. But I also have adopted other ways. But all the models are saying the same thing. It's our behavior. Our behavior is driven by our desire to meet our human emotional needs. So if we find that we sabotage ourselves, which sabotage and burnout go hand in hand, because of the fact that we're not feeling our feelings, and there's an undercurrent. Like if you think about the basic ways of sabotaging is like eating chocolate or eating the wrong foods.
Yes.
Before we binge, what do we notice? There's this feeling within that's just like, like I've just read an email. Before I know it, I haven't dealt with it. I've pushed it aside. It's really triggered me, and I'm going to go to the fridge now. Before I know it, I'm looking at the fridge looking for Lindt chocolate, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not your poison, then it might be work. It might be alcohol. It might be online shopping, anything to escape. There's this undercurrent. There's this feeling underneath it that is there. So our unhealthy habits are meeting our emotional needs. And on this handout, I've listed the inner child needs. And so often our unhealthy habits are meeting at least 3 or 4 of our inner child needs. So for instance, if you're really into lots of sugar, or you can't just seem to eat healthy, you keep sabotaging yourself, well, then you're probably getting comfort out of that diet, which is a human emotional need. You probably meeting your need for variety, because like a crappy diet, like you can eat whatever you want. There's no restriction. There's a lot of fun in it. You might also be getting connection, loving connection. If you and your partner at the end of the day just sit on the couch and order Uber Eats and watch Netflix, there's connection. It's the thing that I do with my partner. And if it might be also that you get your need of significance, attention or approval, as you were saying before in your example, from your family. Oh, thanks, Mom, we get another ice cream. Yay. Now, if you say, okay, we're going to put you on a healthy diet, which is sugar-free, gluten-free, fun-free.
Can you imagine?
Where are you meeting your need of comfort? How are you meeting your need of connection? How are you meeting your need of significance? Your kids are now going, oh, yuck.
Yep.
So you don't feel significant anymore. How are you meeting your need of connection with your partner? He wants to do what he's doing. You're trying to eat healthy. How are you connecting? So you're not setting yourself up to win here. So this is why we often, as very smart, intelligent women, we say, I know what is going to work. So and we think it's willpower. We just beat ourselves up and say, tomorrow's going to be a different day. But it's actually just the fact that we haven't looked at this in the right way and realizing we need to really meet our emotional needs in our new healthy behaviors. So it's a big topic. I know we're running out of time as well, but there's a handout there, and there's also a meditation to help people to connect with their inner child as well.
Wow.
And,
absolutely.
It's a beautiful process.
Oh, so beautiful. I really, connect with that as well. I bring my clients through their inner child work in the very early stages of connecting with me, because that is the foundation of where they're starting with, and that is the connection that they have to, that they need to come closer to be more receptive to, and that's the one that they've shut out for a lot of their life. So I really connect with that, and I thank you for those beautiful, generous offers that you have. And also, I would love to put up all your socials and how to contact you, and more importantly, is there a workshop? I can't remember. You mentioned that to me when we were chatting about the summit. Is there a workshop or a masterclass or something? What's your latest like?
I'm always creating.
You're always doing stuff.
No, so we have our foundational course, which is My Blissful Life, and it's a really great place to start for women. But again, if you've been on the journey for a long time, there's a lot, obviously, nuances that can help what you've already been doing, like I was explaining about the role of acceptance, but also in that we look at other concepts such as trauma and how it relates to burnout. But really, it's about for me, it's about understanding the science, because our rational mind needs that. We need to
Yes.
understand why we do something, because that helps give meaning to it. If we give meaning to it, we're more likely to do it. But it's about the experiential, because nothing's going to change unless you implement it yourself. It's great to go to healers. It's great to have one-on-ones. It's all, but unless you're actually knowing how to meet yourself, then that's, this is about sustainable. This is about the work we do, right, for the rest of our lives, Vanessa. It's not about just this small part of burnout. This is like, once you do this, you realize, oh my gosh, it's not just about getting out of burnout. It's about me really, truly creating a life I love for the rest of my life. Yep. And so come at the end of April, I am starting on a live round of doing Heart of Bliss. And this is really about how to go into meet these parts of us, these unhealed, unloved parts of us, and do it in a way that's simple and effective, because it would be wonderful to have all the time in the world, but as women who are juggling everything, it's got to be, how do I meet myself in that meeting when things haven't gone to plan? Or how do I meet myself when my kid is having a meltdown and running late? Like, how do I shift my state? Because when I do that, everything around me changes. And so this is, again, a very healing focus, but it's grounded. It's about being grounded, because we have a big mission here, all of us women here in this life. And then there's lots of other things. I have a real connection to India, and at the end of the year we're running a retreat over there as well. But if people are interested or they resonate, then they can certainly just follow me on reach out, actually. Say hi. It'd be wonderful.
Say hi. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Say hi. He's always open to connecting, and that's the thing I love about her. It's the thing I love about all the women that we have in our summit. They're all here to connect with you, and they've all been there, and they can empathize, they can feel you. And I think this is the net of support that we are trying to get out to everyone that's listening. And it doesn't matter if you are in burnout or not, because everything that we are all sharing here, and what Fiona's sharing here, we can implement it. We can make it part of our lives from the beginning, regardless of where we are in our emotional state, regardless of where we are in it. We might be like me, like I'm just, I've just recovered from burnout, and I'm in a beautiful space right now. I still need to do all these things.
It never stops.
I never.
Why would it though?
Always, but I'm technically fine. But it's all that it's all that muscle, it's all that love that you pour into yourself that's absolutely necessary, and it's ongoing. It doesn't matter where you are in your journey. So we are all here to support you, and in return, Lisa said something about you fill your cup. And then your cup overflows, and as it overflows to everybody. So hence this is what we're all doing. Our cups are full because we've done what we'll keep doing our work, but we're overflowing it to you as well. Thank you so much, Fiona, for coming here today, for your beautiful presence, your wisdom, your experience. And I really want to honor you in your work, honor what you had to go through. And I want to thank everybody in the medical profession for giving your love, giving all of you, really. And it's our most biggest gratitude to each and every one of you in the medical profession, regardless of what you do. And so if you feel that someone really needs to hear this today, please feel free to share this video. It's free. It's a resource for you and for people in the future as well. It's for you to re-listen to everything. Fiona's websites, bonuses, all will be in the website for the summit. So please log in, have a look, and connect. So thank you, Fiona, for joining us today and for your time.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Vanessa. It's been so much fun, and just encourage everyone to keep leaning in. There's grace in your experience, and you just get to receive it more and more. Thank you.
Oh, I just remembered something. I didn't ask you my last question. Oh, well, never mind. We'll just go ahead anyway.
I'm always up for more. See, I just said about be open to receive more.
Yeah. One more small, tiny question. If you saw you were talking about inner child, right? So if you saw your 8-year-old self standing there looking at you, having a moment, could be a moment of joy, sadness, anything, doesn't matter. What would you whisper in her ear?
I would whisper to her, Amma, which is universal love to me, Amma, the mother, is always taking care. And I truly believe that we are held by unconditional love, but our job or the work that we do is about tuning into that. And that's available to us even in challenges. And so when we really lean into that truth that I am held, I'm loved, Amma's taking care, the mother's taking care of me, there's no greater relief than that. Now, it's, to me, is everything. And all of that is my supply. It's my supply of health. It's my supply of wealth. It's my supply. So she's got it.
On that note, we thank you for tuning in and much love.
Nice way to finish. Wonderful. Om Namo Narayani. Thank you.